William A. Brown. I've got a special guest on tonight. You guys have seen him before, and we always enjoy this gentleman on our broadcast. And so I want to welcome everyone. Please welcome Mr. Peter Ratcliffe. Hey, Peter.
Hello, Brother William, and everybody
How
out
are you,
there.
sir?
Looking over my shoulder, waiting for the Gestapo to come pounding on the door. But other than that, inspired by my neighbors.
I understand. I do understand, my friend. Well, I think that, and I sympathize and empathize with you because, any of us could be in the situation that you are in Minnesota, and it's troubling to say the least. It's troubling to say the least, man. My heart goes out to you and your family, your friends, your neighbors out there. Now, are you in Minneapolis or are you in St. Paul?
We're in St. Paul, in a largely immigrant working class neighborhood called the East Side of St. Paul.
I understand. What I'm going to do, I'm going to play a clip that is, to me, is quite disturbing. And it's happening right there in your neighborhood, right there in your backyard. And let's go here and we can do that because I want your take on that because young lady was tragically killed. And I found out she wasn't the only one. There was a black gentleman that was killed on I think it was New Year's Eve there.
In Los Angeles. Was
that Los Angeles? This gentleman was shooting an AR-15 in the air.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, that was Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is just a horrible situation, and it doesn't have to happen. Before I go there, it's my understanding that ICE was sent there. ICE was sent. Oh, there's Warren Gibbs. I want to introduce you to someone, Peter. This is Warren Gibbs. Warren Gibbs is a mental health specialist, and he was on with me last week, I believe, and we were talking about the mental impact that ICE is causing, especially with our children. What's going to happen? Children being traumatized and this thing. So what long-lasting effects this could have on them? And it's quite troubling. Hey, good afternoon. Good evening, Warren. All
Good evening,
right, your mic is off.
Yeah, I'm here. Good evening, everybody. How y'all doing?
Doing great. Okay, I want you to meet Peter Ratcliffe. My good friend Peter Ratcliffe, he's a historian, and he's in St. Paul, Minnesota, ground zero from where the Gestapo, and I go along with what you're saying perfectly, Peter. I call it the Gestapo. I'll give you my opinions about that on the way back. But in the meantime, let's play this clip because this is quite troubling. Okay, where are we right now? Gaslighting America. Okay. ICE footage exposes. Okay, let's do this. All right, bear with me.
Nome was shown a montage of videos of ICE using a reckless amount of force, including one video in which a family trying to get home from their son's basketball game in Minneapolis found themselves in between protesters and ICE, and their 6-month-old baby ended up breathing in tear gas and had to be administered CPR. An infant had to be administered CPR because of ICE's reckless use of force. So now we've seen all ages, from a 6-month-old baby to a 79-year-old getting their rib cracked to 72-year-old protesters getting pepper sprayed. Everybody in between being abused. Both citizens and non-citizens, people who are immigrants, are still being deported without due process. We need to have some standards. We need to be following the law. I'm okay with getting criminal thugs off of the street, but that includes criminal thugs with a badge and a gun, people who are using a reckless amount of force to target people who are innocent. If we were targeting the person who killed 19-year-old Laken Riley and he's like a gang member who is here illegally, sure, that's fine. That is not what is happening. ICE has used so much reckless force that we have hundreds of videos of U.S. citizens being thrown to the ground and being abused. We'll talk about that as Kristi Noem gets exposed, as Kristi Noem gets confronted. Make sure you drop a like to help support the Adam Mockler feed, help boost the message. And let's bring it back here. Margaret Brennan from CBS's Face the Nation, who kind of plays a bit too much into the both sides stuff throughout this interview, does begin to press Kristi Noem and says, what's the breakdown of the percentage of those in custody who have actually committed a criminal offense? This perfectly proves the point that I was trying to make.
Sure, but you just said millions. What's the breakdown of the percentage of those who you have in custody who have actually committed a criminal offense versus just the civil infraction?
Good question.
Every single individual has committed a crime, but 70% of them have committed or have charges against them on violent crimes and crimes that they are charged with or have been convicted of that have come from other countries that are here illegally, first of all, and then they have committed a criminal act while they've been here or in their home countries as well.
It's not 70%.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
70% of everyone
you guys keep changing your percentage. You pick and choose what numbers you think work, but that is the facts, is that 70%.
We've been citing the numbers from her own DHS. The reports from her own DHS show that it's not 70%.
Of the people that we have detained have charges against them or have been convicted of charges, and they need to be brought to justice. And we're going to keep doing that no matter how much you guys keep lying and don't tell the public the truth. It absolutely is that these law enforcement officers are out there every day doing the work to protect the American people, and they will keep doing that because they believe in enforcing the law, which is exactly what President Trump has charged them with.
Okay. Well, our reporting is that 47%, based on your agency's own numbers, 47% have criminal convictions against them. But let's talk about the other numbers.
Wrong again. Absolutely. We'll get you the correct numbers so you can use them in the future.
Well, that's
all right. Kristi Noem starts off the interview very smug and very wrong. It gets worse and worse. But just to go back to reality, the DHS figures obtained by CBS News show nearly 67,000 of the individuals in ICE custody on Thursday were single adult detainees facing deportation because of alleged violations of U.S. immigration law. Another 6,000 detainees were classified as family units, meaning parents and underage children taken into custody as families for alleged immigration violations. At the bottom, the internal DHS data coming from Kristi Noem's Department of Homeland Security indicates roughly 47%, or about 34,000 of ICE's detainees, had criminal charges or convictions in the U.S. The reason why this is important is because it gets to the heart of where ICE is allocating their funds. If they're allocating their funds towards hitting some daily quota set by Stephen Miller of 3,000 detainees per day, that is why we are seeing the streets being terrorized with people who are emboldened to just ramp up the numbers. That's not what people voted for. Precision matters in this scenario. Then Kristi Noem gets really weird about Jonathan Ross, the ICE agent who we know his name, we know his face. He murdered Renee Nicole Good, but Kristi Noem treats him like he's in Secret Service protection or like he's Voldemort, like don't utter his name. How dare you say that? She clutches her pearls. Take a look.
To justice and letting people still express their First Amendment rights.
Well, you know that it is in dispute about weaponizing a car versus driving forward, but I'll put that aside.
No, it's really not. Everybody can watch the videos and see that.
Well, let me talk to you about the officer, Jonathan Ross. He was struck. He was hospitalized.
Don't say his name. I mean, for heaven's sakes, we shouldn't have people continue to dox law enforcement when they have an 8,000% increase in death threats against them. I know, but that doesn't mean it should continue to be said. His life, he got attacked with a car that was trying to take his life.
You got it.
And then people have attacked him and his family, and they are in jeopardy. And we have law enforcement officers every day.
Every time I'm trying to attack someone with my car, I first reverse it back and then spin the wheel and then try to drive forward. Yeah, well, I could just drive forward. Why would I reverse back? I'm talking about Renee Nicole Good. I'm sorry, but Kristi Noem's pearl clutching in this clip, like how dare you say his name? How dare you utter his name? It's just too funny to me. He's some washed up dude who decided to become an ICE agent. Now, Kristi Noem is then confronted about a 6-month-old child who had to be given CPR and resuscitated because the parents were driving home from a game and they got caught up between protesters and ICE. Her callous response is insane. Take a listen.
Acknowledge that. I want to talk to you about some of the incidents that the public has seen. There was a U.S. citizen, Aliyah Rahman, on her way to a medical appointment out in Minneapolis. She was dragged out of her car and detained. Video of her arrest was spreading on social media. There were allegations there of aggressive tactics. You've seen other incidents, for example, out in Minneapolis, this family with 6 children, with one as young as 6 months old, got kind of caught in the incident as they were driving to basketball practice. Mm-hmm. The mother, Destiny Jackson, told CBS ICE agents stopped the car, told them to leave, but the agents were in the way, and they feared that they would have happened to them what happened to Renee Good. They didn't drive off. ICE released a canister of tear gas, and the mother described giving her infant CPR. We're showing that video there. Do any of these tactics seem to you heavy-handed?
That family was caught up in that situation because of violent protest.
I'm going to stop it right there for a second. And I want my panel to come in. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, Peter, is there anyone clear on why ICE is in Minnesota in the first place?
There is certainly speculation that one narrative is this is meant to be a distraction from the Epstein files, which have still not been released by the Department of Justice. There's a narrative that Trump is eager to punish his enemies, and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is on that list of enemies because he was the Democratic Party's candidate for vice president in the election in November of 2024. Let me just tell a little story. The day before the murder of Renee Good, there was an ICE action in my neighborhood on the east side of St. Paul. 15 vehicles pulled up at 8 a.m. in a district that is largely commercial but has some apartments. And they said that they were there to arrest one individual, someone who was from El Salvador. When they came with cameras. They came with Kristi Noem, and she had a major camera opportunity when they busted in on this immigrant. And it should not have taken more than 15 people to arrest one individual, but they were creating a dramatic visual for Kristi Noem. So I still can't decide what is driven by ego, what is driven by politics, whether the people who are in charge are just incompetent or if they are really vicious. But this is the kind of behavior that we're seeing that does not meet the need, if there is indeed a need. And I'll tell one other story. I just met Friday evening a young couple who come from Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. And they came to the United States having lived a number of years in a refugee camp in Thailand. they are completely legal. They've met all the requirements, they have all the right documentation. But now the Department of Homeland Security has announced that they have something new going called the Paris Project. And like the way the president could not spell the Nobel Prize, they're also misspelling Paris, giving it 2 R's. And it is to identify, arrest, detain, and deport people who are here legally. Leave aside the question of having been convicted of a crime. They are here legally. And now, in order to meet those Stephen Miller's numbers of 3,000 a day, they are arresting legally documented people. The media has not told this story. Go ahead, brother.
That's a shame. Now, before we go on, I want you to tell the audience about yourself a little bit, and then I will go to Warren, because I'd like to, since Warren is in the mental health field, I want him to really elaborate and speak on the psychological impact, the mental health impact that this could have on not only the children, but the parents as well. Peter, tell the audience, who is Peter Ratcliffe? What do you do? Tell them a little bit about your library and so forth and so on. And I will go to Warren, then I'm going to come back to you. And I want you to put this in a historical perspective. What does this remind you of going back in history? Tell us a little about yourself, Peter.
Sure. So I'm a historian. I focused in American labor history with a particular interest on the role of race and racism in the history of the American working class and the labor movement. Brother William and I connected because I had published a book about Richmond, Virginia. In 1982, I moved here to St. Paul to take a position teaching in the history department at Macalester College. I taught there for 30 years. I retired in 2012, and in 2013, my wife and I, her name is Beth Cleary, Beth and I co-founded a nonprofit called the East Side Freedom Library. We moved into a historic Carnegie Library building that the city of St. Paul owned and had been a neighborhood library. We moved into an empty building. There are now 38,000 books in that building, focused in labor, immigration, racial and gender justice movements. And we have had educational programs. We work with middle and high school kids who do what are called National History Day projects. So we try to be a site for education and a site to build community. So that's who I am.
Yes, and there are many platforms that you've been on this network. You've been on this one twice before, I believe.
Yes.
And you've also been, I believe you've been on Ann's show too as well.
And on Ann's show, yes.
You've been on Ann's show. And so we'll definitely have you back. A wealth of knowledge and also inspiring in many, many, many ways. Fellowman Gibbs, Warren Gibbs. Good evening, sir.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Hey, thank you. I want you to meet Peter Ratcliffe. And Peter was introduced to me by our brother, Tierre Van Meter. I think you know Tierre.
Yeah.
And so I was, and I'm grateful for him for making that introduction. I want you to tell the audience, who are you? What do you do? And also, I want you to touch on the psychological impact. since you're in the mental health field, the psychological impact that this
Yeah.
has on our children. You heard something about that this one family driving, I think, from basketball practice or somewhere, and the family got caught up in this chaos, and the ICE agents released these canisters of poison, I'm going to say, and the
Mhm.
child needed 6-month-old baby needed CPR. And let's talk about that baby, and uh, maybe the baby will recover. But what about those who are conscious enough, those children that are conscious enough to see what's going on, that are terrorized? Talk about that a little bit. Tell us a little bit
Well,
about your background. Then I'd like.
yeah, yeah. And I'm Warren Gibbs. I'm LCSWA. I practice currently in North Carolina as well as California. And it's ironic. Well, not even ironic. I just feel like, it's fate that you have a historian here. Because what I was going to say before we even got into the mental and psychological effects is this is history repeating itself. And I think when you ask Peter about Minnesota, yeah, Tim Walz and so forth as well, but George Floyd and all the things that happened with George Floyd not even 10 years ago in this same state. And it's a biopsychosocial aspect here when we talk about psychological and mental health effects, because one of the first things I talk to any of my clients about to build therapeutic rapport is biopsychosocial. How does your environment and different elements of your environment affect your mental and psychological well-being? And I just did a panel in Atlanta last weekend, and we sat here and we talked about these instances that are occurring with ICE, and we're looking back in our communities like it's definitely history repeating itself. Some people woke up and saw this like, I can't believe this is happening in America. But for us, Will, it's been happening for generations. We can't even say decades anymore, from slavery to segregation. And I'm not just talking about communities of color. I'm talking about with the Holocaust and my Jewish brothers. I'm talking about the internment camps that they put the Asians in. Yes, children are affected. Yes, families are affected. But just imagine living in a country, again, like I said last time we was together, we're supposed to be the land of the free, home of the brave, and offer so much democracy for people that are seeking political asylum to come here and become naturalized citizens and learn truth, justice, in the American way. And our president and the administration behind them are sending these agents out here, like they said in the YouTube video, of nobodies that want to get a rank and show off with these ICE raids and do these things that normal law enforcement will not do. I remember seeing the videos where the mayor, the police chief said, tell ICE to get the F out of, Minnesota, get the F out of Minneapolis and all of those places where these ICE raids are occurring. And to see this on the news, to see this in everyday social media banter, to see this in everyday communication, yes, it's going to mess with your psychological and mental health well-being, because we don't feel safe. It's not just our brothers that are brown. It brings back memories of trauma from the African American community. It brings back people that do believe in peace and doing things the right way, seeing this violence and saying, I can't believe I live here. What kind of America am I raising my children in? It's so and then the children, if we're teaching them hate begets hate. So if they see these things, every kid won't grow up and say, oh my God, this is horrible. Some of them will grow up and say, hey, when I graduate high school, I want to be ICE agents as well. So just think of that socioeconomic factor. ICE is telling people they can pay them more than working a 9 to 5. So if I'm sitting here at my job and I don't like what I'm doing and I throw on an ICE vest, I can take care of my family. That's psychological and mental as well. And then, like they said, this guy gets this name and becomes this overnight celebrity. You got one opposing side saying he's a nobody trying to get stripes. Then you got the other side saying where he's getting death threats and all of these things to his family. So where do you stand as a human being when you can agree to a certain degree with both sides, not being biased more or less, but let's just imagine doing your job and getting death threats for what is supposed to be described as doing your job. Then on the other side, you're a bigot, you're a fascist, because you're working for this organization that is hurting people, that like we said last time, they don't have an appropriate screening on who's legal and who's not legal. I see someone, they look like they're not from here, we can walk up on them. There's really no proper protocol, and everybody is on edge. So that is anxiety, that is depression, that is paranoia, that is stress, all of these factors that can affect your mental and emotional wellness.
Absolutely. Peter, I noticed that you were jotting down while Warren was talking, you were jotting down some notes there. What would you like to address or ask or comment on?
Well, I think here we are the day before Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And ideally, that is an opportunity to look into our nation's history, ask what Dr. King stood for, ask how and why we lost him before he was even 40 years old. And it's really important that we tie these things together. We have been so impressed here in Minneapolis and St. Paul with the leadership that's coming from the African American community, when, of course, none of them are directly threatened. They've been here since their people got dragged over here on a slave ship. And yet they are stepping up on behalf of our Latin American, our Southeast Asian, our East African and West African neighbors. They are stepping up and providing leadership because, I think, to follow what Warren was saying, because they carry the historical memory of both the mistreatment that their ancestors experienced, and they learned, and the stories got passed down, how to organize, how to stand together. As we say, the pendulum, swings, but it takes human beings pushing it to make it swing. And it's been very impressive here to see the leadership coming from African Americans in the religious community, in the educational community, in the labor movement. The president of the Minneapolis Teachers Union is an African American woman who actually took a year off from teaching to be the primary guardian of George Floyd Square, of making sure that that space was treated as a significant space to honor the memory of George Floyd and to learn from what happened there. And she is now, her name is Marcia Howard. She's now president of the Minneapolis Teachers Union, which is one of a network of unions that is calling for this coming Friday to be a day of no school, no work, no shopping, a day of reflection and solidarity to say ICE has got to get out of Minnesota. We really appreciate what the African American community is putting forward in this struggle here.
You mentioned something about with this, Stephen Miller has this goal of 3,000 people a day. And rather than, I think that any one of us American would say, if someone is here illegally, and it's a shame that I have to say that, if they are here illegally and they're committing violent crimes, then yes, you arrest them. Now, they also deserve due process, which is something this administration seemed to be ignoring. And I think the goal here, because I was reading something for whatever reason that this administration has unleashed this their private brown shirt Gestapos. You know, I think that the ultimate goal is fear. And I think that this president wants to invoke fear around the country. And that's what dictators do. They want they want to invoke fear so that you will obey whatever they say. Someone was saying something today about most dictators. They want you to obey in advance, knowing that something's going to happen to you if you do not follow marching orders. And that's not the country that I love. That's not America that I've always believed that had the potential of being great. Of course, I'm old enough to remember back during Martin Luther King, the civil rights era, the civil rights movement, and so forth and so on, that, there are some major problems with racism, discrimination, lack of opportunities for our people and other brown people. I understand that. And after the Martin Luther King riots right here in Richmond, Virginia, I saw in Richmond, Virginia, there were riots here in Richmond, Virginia. And with the civil rights movement in the early 70s, it seemed like things were getting better. There were more job opportunities for Black and brown people. There were more the ability to buy a home or get a bank account, and so many different things that was afforded other people. But the thing here that I see right now is fear. Now, what I heard is that the factor, what the motive was that they wanted to bring ICE there to crack down on fraud. Now, that sounds really weird to me. Of course, there's fraud all over the country. There's fraud right there in the White House. If we really want to talk about real fraud and stealing, and appropriating funds and things of that nature. But I think it is more than that. They want to turn this into a police state. They want to be able to, I think the whole idea is that he's afraid of the 2026 midterms. And he's doing things like, they were talking things about the War Powers Act. They would talk about different things where they can declare martial law, which that means that, hey, no elections. So I think what they want to do is to evoke fear. They want to stir up and cause violence so people will, in a physical way, fight back and give him reasons to do what he's doing. I'm going to say this, then I'm going to go back to Warren here in a second, and then back to you, Peter. I remember a book that I read back in the 70s, and it was called The Glass House Tapes by Louis Tackwood. I'm not sure whether you read that book, Peter, or Warren, you read that book or not. It's out of print right now. And Louis Tackwood was a double agent. He was a criminal, okay? He was into gun smuggling, drugs, and a whole lot of things, right? The federal government also hired him. Our federal government hired him because they want to get it on the inside of organized crime. And it was something that he was saying. He was talking about the Black Panther movement and how the Black Panthers, they were given a bad rap also, because what I found about they would want you to know or think that the Black Panthers, there was this Black militant, dangerous gang that did nothing but cause harm and destruction. They didn't tell you that the Black Panther Party, they would feed the homeless. They would protect the neighborhoods, okay? They would do so many things, make sure that they had medical assistance and things of that nature. There were so many great things that the Black Panther Party was doing, and they're still alive today, that you won't even read about or hear about it. There was talk about one situation where they were preparing meals for the homeless. They had these giant spaghetti pots, okay? And they were going to feed the neighborhood, feed the homeless, whatever it is. There was a call into the headquarters. This is where they were preparing. And that on the other side of town, some of the brothers were being attacked or whatever it is. So they left headquarters and went out to support the brothers. While they were going, the FBI came in and put thumbtacks in the spaghetti. And also, while they were gathering and have these large crowds, they would have what they called an agent provocateur among the Black Panthers that would throw rocks or do something or bottles at the police, which gave the police permission to shoot and kill and maim citizens. So historically, I can see what's going on here, and I'm so happy to have both of you guys on. Oh, by the way, I had some bad news today. My great friend Mike, you remember Mike Ward? He was on the panel. He's on this panel every Sunday, and I got a call from him today. I was just texting Warren Gibbs, and Mike's brother, ironically named Warren, passed away today.
Oh.
I said, whoa. And I called Mike and talked to him for a while. I said, Mike, you don't have to come on today. He said, no, I want to come on. I want to come on. And I just got a text from him a few minutes ago. And he said, obviously, he said, hey, brother, he's going to have to pass today because that hit him pretty hard. I'm sure it did, Mike. If you're listening, brother, we love you, man. The thing about it was, I just spoke to his brother, Warren, yesterday. Oh. He was in the hospital, but he was getting better. And he was full of spirit, sounding great and stuff like that. And so it just hit me pretty hard. So if any of you guys out there know Mike, reach out to him, give him your condolences. And Mike is a great friend. His brother was also a great friend of mine. And so I told Mike I was going to dedicate this broadcast to Warren, his brother. Great guy, just an outstanding guy, smart, funny. And he and I, we used to, he's a client of mine, but we used to get on the phone after we started talking business. We'll still talk about an hour, you know, at least sometime. And just talk about anything, talk about life. And I'm going to miss him. So, and Mike, if you're listening, brother, we love you and we miss you. And my heart goes out to you. But getting back to the program, I want either one of you to jump in. I think this whole thing is about fear. What I've noticed about this administration, they will do something and they will give you a reason for doing it, but it's not the real thing that's happening. In other words, they will tell you that just like blowing up the boats in Venezuela, they say it's about drug trafficking. Later to find out, no, it never was about drug trafficking. It's about oil, okay? You mentioned something earlier, Peter. These things that's going on right now, all these distractions. Well, it's not about the violent criminals, because if not, why would you put a quota of 3,000 people a day to be arrested? Oh, how do you know what that figure is? You go after the violent criminals, I'm okay with that, but you have a quota of 3,000 a day? Come on. All right. Stephen Miller. We all know what he is. We all know what he's all about. And he had mentioned something. I saw something that he said he wanted to reduce the American population by 1/3. Well, how do you do that? How do you do that? Unless you get rid of 1/3 of the country, which is what, over 100 million people? Okay. So I think it's all about fear. And like I said, again, they will tell you one thing when the motive is something entirely different. So Peter, you can jump right on in, and then let's go to Warren and see what he has to say about this, because I really want to go and dig a little bit deeper into the psychological impact that this is having on children, women, older adults. And because we find out they're not only arresting people that weren't born here or illegal people, they're arresting people that are here legally. They are arresting American citizens that already have the paperwork. Okay? You can see babies snatched away from their mothers, mothers snatched out of cars, growing up, it was always my family, my mom always taught me, and my family believed in this. You don't abuse women. You don't abuse children. And you have these 200 and plus men snatching women out of the car, throwing them on the pavement, and putting their knees on their necks and in their backs, just because you want to exercise your First Amendment right. Peter?
Yeah. I think, and I don't know, how much of the story has come out nationally, but in the last 2 weeks, ICE has also focused on schools. So the very day that Renee Good was murdered, ICE raided a school called Roosevelt High School. They beat up and cuffed a teacher and another staff member. They tear gassed high school students. The St. Paul and Minneapolis schools will be closed this coming week as the superintendent and the administration try to figure out if they should be shifting to online learning. Wow. I talked to both teachers and administrators at elementary schools who say that the absenteeism is enormous, that people are afraid to bring their children to school. Tomorrow, on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, my wife and I are going to a training for how to provide safety at schools. There is a high school 3 blocks away from us, and we have joined a group of volunteers who will be at that high school every morning when parents are dropping their kids off, and every afternoon when they're picking them up. And it's the unfortunate, frustrating dynamic that let's get some white folks to stand up, and maybe we'll get more respect from these thugs than the black and brown people that they're coming looking for. So children are being very directly impacted by this. So let me turn the microphone over to Warren.
I hear a lot about fear, and that's what he wants the American people to experience. But this is about power, hands down. I see a president that, back then you didn't want me. Now I'm hot, you all on me. And I knew this was going to happen if Trump had got back in office. Let's go back just a little bit to the elections and so forth. He's in Minnesota. We talked about, walls and everything going on with that. But I started, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the flack before he got to Minnesota was in California. And let's just think about who was from there. Literally who was from there. And then, as you guys said, I love how Will brought up the story about the glass house literature. We got a president throwing stones in a glass house. Let's be real. You sitting here talking about you trying to get violent criminals out of the country that ain't supposed to be here. And you are one of the most violent criminals there are since you've got in office. Let's not forget what happened at the Capitol. Let's not forget, how he exerts his power and his privilege. Let's not forget, before he was president, this was a celebrity. And I say this all the time. We used to rock with him from the Trump Tower to The Apprentice. I mean, all of this is for clout. All of this is for, I'm trying to get some of my dignity back. And it's just a charade for him, a facade for him. And what he's doing, the fear comes from putting a 3-year-old in office. And it's crazy because I don't like to talk as a social worker about political views, but let's just call a spade a spade. It is what it is. When you put somebody with this much influence and privilege in power, of course it's something to be afraid of. Not just the African American community, not just the Hispanic community. Everyone is afraid of where America will go for the next several years while he's in office because of the actions he's making. I sat and watched the 60-minute interview. Mind you, never ever heard of a president wanting to sue a network. And then he lost that civil suit, and Paramount can do whatever they want to do with him. They did the 60-minute interview and allowed him to get on camera and just look ridiculous. South Park, the whole season, parody of Donald Trump. I mean, libel, slander, you have it, right? And it's just like somebody saying, since you did this to me or said this to me, and I'm in this position now, I got to get some get back. And a lot of people are afraid because they know who this man is. Again, just think about in our personal lives saying, man, I know I've said it a couple times, man, have I ever come across some money or come across some power or a little bit of influence? All them people that hurt me are going to feel, what they did to me. Revenge is a dish best served cold. I'm vindictive. I'm bitter. And if this is our leader, the leader of the free world, gentlemen, it goes deeper than just how the children are affected. Now, this is who they see in leadership, and you're creating more and more that will grow up and be just like him. And that's the craziest thing I fear more than anything else. The Black Panther Party, there would be no social work without the Black Panther Party. Literally, social work programs were taken away from our communities and government funded. That's why we have welfare now. That's why we have Medicaid was there before, of course, but some of the government assisted programs like supportive housing and so forth, we started that in our own neighborhoods. But when you take the resources out and then put poison in the communities, that's why you have these single parent homes where government will tell a young lady, we'll take care of you better than any man will. That's why we have broken homes. That's why we have the situations that happen. Because I promise you, I ain't seen ICE in Beverly Hills. And Peter, correct me if I'm wrong. Have they been in any of these prosperous neighborhoods in St. Paul or Minneapolis? Absolutely not. The marginalization, the disenfranchisement in itself is just more and more making American people see what we're dealing with. This is like a civil rights movement all over again because you're nationally televising it. And it's going to make people like the ACLU, the Defamation League, the NAA. That's why we're uniting, because we have dealt with this before. He is the new age Bull Connor. He is the new age George Wallace. And we couldn't put a stop to it. That's why people are afraid. When we see something this problematic, our country says through voting and election, no, we can say no. And somehow, some way, he still won. That's scary. And now he wants to make everyone feel the repercussions, the ones that didn't vote for him, the ones that weren't behind his administration, the ones that didn't want to make America great again. And I fear that's what he's going to do with the next several years in office. It's payback. Payback. That's what I'm afraid of.
And well, he's showing you right now. That's what it's all about, and Peter, the thing, and thank you for that, Warren, bringing that up, because you mentioned January 6th. Now, those were the insurrectionists then, but yet he pardoned them. So if you're against criminality, then why would you pardon over 1,500 people that were involved in a real insurrection? Why would you do that? It makes no sense at all. So that's why I said before that it's rarely, he will state one thing, but it's rarely that's what it is. His motive is something different. It's more a deflection, a distraction to get you away from what the real thing is that's really going on. Like Peter, you mentioned the Epstein files. Oh yeah, if you notice, you got people talking about ICE now, and not so much about the Epstein files. You have people talking about Venezuela right now, and not so much about the Epstein files, right? Had his FBI to go and scrub those files, redact many pages of that file, so we really won't see what's going on. But all of it's coming out. It is definitely coming out. So, like I said, then you've got the Supreme Court, which really angers me, because he has the Supreme Court in his pocket. So you've got all three branches of government. You got the Supreme, well, including the Supreme Court in your pocket. They've already given him immunity for crimes that he would commit while he's in office. How ridiculous can that be? That makes no sense at all. It makes no sense at all. Talk about, I'm going to skip over it and I'm going to come right back to it, bring us all back together. You're so concerned about drug trafficking and drugs coming to the United States. And he just pardoned the former president of Honduras, who brought over 400 tons of cocaine into this country, along with doing a lot of other illegal things. So yes, he went down and got Maduro. Now, I don't know anything about Maduro. They said he's a bad guy. Okay, I'll take it at your word that he's a bad guy. But are we the police of the entire world or the Western Hemisphere? Okay, using our resources go down into someone else's country. Now, I don't see him going into North Korea. I don't see him going into Russia. Okay, I don't see him going in China. So no. It's all, and now it's talking about taking over Greenland. Let's think about our soldiers. Look at the position that he's putting our soldiers in, our young men and women. Now, this is supposed to be the president of no new wars. And you know what's really, really crazy, Peter and Warren, is that this guy says he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. How, you know, you can hit me, you can knock me over with a feather with that one. The Nobel Peace Prize, when you're causing havoc around the world? Are you serious? Now, it's my understanding that this young lady named Machado from Venezuela came up and gave him her Nobel Peace Prize, and he took it like, oh yeah, look at me, I've got the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, the committee shot that down. That prize is not supposed to be exchanged or transferred. Okay? So you would never, you got the prize, but you would never be the laureate. I mean, me growing up, Peter, and no matter what competition I was in, I never wanted to cheat to get it. I refused to cheat to get it, because what does it really mean if you have to cheat to get something? I mean, that is absolutely nothing. I mean, that's narcissism at its finest right there. I've got to cheat to get something? No. I don't care whether I'm playing cards. I don't care whether I'm playing football, baseball, basketball, or tennis, chess, whatever it is. I want to win fair and square. That's how I can feel good about myself, because I can say, hey, I'm a winner. I'm a winner, but not cheating to get it. Golf, whatever it is, you know? So, no, it is, pardon January 6th, pardon the president of Honduras. They want to demote Senator Mark Kelly, who got on TV, and this is the Uniform Code of Justice, saying you must refuse illegal orders. And they make a big deal out of this. Oh, no, he should be court-martialed. He should be, but no, it's in the Uniform Code of Justice. And now these senators are getting death threats because it's 6 of them that went on and did a video, said you must refuse, you should refuse illegal orders. They didn't say legal orders. At first, they tried to lie about it. They got on TV and says, well, and now he's saying you must refuse orders. That's not what he said at all. That's not what they said at all. We all heard it. The gaslighting, Peter, is astonishing to me. They will tell you, we didn't see what happened with Renee Good. We didn't hear what Mark Kelly did. And they make excuses for everything. So I've been running my mouth for a while. Peter, I want you to jump in and take any part of that you want. Dissect that, and your commentary would be appreciated.
Well, I want to try to move in another direction, and that is
Okay.
to not just focus on what a mess they are and the damage that they're doing. All that's true, but I'm also witnessing a remarkable outpouring of empathy, care, mutual aid, solidarity among people who are very different from each other. People who are immigrants from Myanmar or Laos or Cambodia, African Americans, here in the Twin Cities, Native Americans, and white folks. People are coming forward. We have in my neighborhood, we now have a what's called a signal chat, so that we hear if ICE has showed up at somebody's house, if ICE has showed up at a restaurant or a store. And there are now 1,100 people in our neighborhood who are on this chat. And they show up and they put themselves in the way to try to protect their neighbors. And when I think about the kind of society that I want to live in, I'm seeing it growing all around us. And I think that, I mean, it's the opposite of what Trump is, the opposite of Stephen Miller and Bannon and all those fools who are cabinet leaders and whatnot, the Secretary of War. And these are ordinary, hardworking people who are generously giving their time, giving their money. Some of them are hiding people out in their homes, protecting them. And I'm just so encouraged by what I see ordinary folks doing. And I think it's the opposite of Trump and of his narcissism, as you put it, and his desire to be worshiped. And these are ordinary folks who care about the people who live down the street from them, and they are standing up for them. I see people going shopping and buying food to deliver to people who are afraid to come out the house because ICE might be waiting to grab them. We went today, we live across the street from a Catholic church. It was historically a German Catholic church. For the last 10, 15 years, it's become a predominantly Latino church. They have saved the church. We got a call that there was fear that ICE was going to come and arrest churchgoers coming out of church after the day's services were over. 50 people showed up at noon today. It was, for those of you who are on the East Coast or the West Coast, it was 3 degrees today in Minnesota. Whoa. It was snowing, and 50 people showed up to protect these Latinos coming out of their Catholic church. That's what's going on here, as well as the Gestapo, as well as the message that Donald Trump is sending, the message of empathy, care, solidarity among ordinary working folks.
You know, that's encouraging, you know, and I see in the comment section too. Yeah, it is encouraging, and I think that's what it's going to take. We can go all the way back to the civil rights movement, where we came together, blacks and whites, and and other folks. We just came together and fought the regime and to make things more equitable and better for Americans. You see, and I think that's what it's going to take now. So, Warren, I want you to come back in a second. Then, Peter, do you think, based on what you just said, that people, I'm looking at the camaraderie and the support that's coming in right now, that what they're trying to do is going to backfire because they're trying to divide us, trying to make us fearful. And based on what you just said, it might just have the opposite effect. It might bring people closer, more unified. And I'm encouraged by that. And that could definitely happen because I think that going into schools, traumatizing our children, going into churches, going into hospitals, going into court buildings, when people are doing the right things, they're going to court. It's because, hey, I have an immigration appointment here. If I don't show up, I'm in trouble. Okay? And they're making it so that if I do show up, I'm in trouble. So we've got to fight back, and I think it's going to take a unified effort, and there are more of us than it is of them. We're not advocating violence, but we're advocating fairness. We're advocating and asking and demanding that they live up to the Constitution that they swore an oath to. So it is crazy. Let's see. ICE ate at a restaurant, then arrested the staff.
Yes.
Wow. I don't know where that happened.
Right here in one of the suburbs outside of Minneapolis.
Are you serious?
After they ate, after they got their meal, then they arrested the staff.
Boy, that's cold-blooded.
Yes.
That is cold-blooded. Oh, you feed me now. Okay, now put your hands behind your back. Wow. That's absolutely incredible. Hey, Warren, Peter made an interesting point about in times like these where the objective is to divide us so they can conquer. But I think that this is going to have the opposite effect. It's going to have the opposite effect is going to happen at the polls. It's going to happen with the people voting. Well, not only that, putting pressure on lawmakers. And I hope that this Congress, they're getting more phone calls than they can handle. Okay. And if you notice, they aren't doing any town halls these days, especially the Republican Party, because people are really letting them have it. And they should. But like I said, it's going to take all of us coming together, the majority of us coming together and says, oh, no. This is not what I signed up for. I'm not doing this. Okay. So Warren, you can jump in, you can dissect any part you want and comment on any part that you want.
I'm concerned. We said the same thing during last year's election. I mean, 2 years now, we in 2026. And I'm just being very transparent about it. And we are seeing a dynamic here that says power and influence still rule. Because I heard a comment you said saying there are strength in them. I hear you, bro. And I believe that. And I was at the rallies when we thought we had it in 2024. And that is my biggest concern because, again, even looking at these comments, power and influence, I believe that it's not just one community now, but America as a country that is marginalized. Let's just be totally honest about it. We got people that still are feeling the repercussions of what happened with this election and saying, I'm not going to vote anymore when we need them to vote the most. We are, to a certain degree, creating the same type of, what's the word I'm looking for, aura that he is. Because we know he is a loser. We know he's a sore loser. So when you, through privilege, through power, through influence, through, put politics, I can't just kind of put my finger on it. But we've always been, to a certain degree, if you want to look at the diverse populations, the majority. But disenfranchisement, marginalization, these things are still very real. And I can sit here and talk to my youth, and knowing that they have been taught this or know this or programmed to know this. I do an exercise with some of my youth, especially my youth that I deal with in California that are at risk. I do the I do an exercise that's similar to like the baby doll test in the 60s. And I ask them to close their eyes. And I name certain professions and tell them to put a skin color to it. Or I'll ask them in their neighborhoods how many buildings and resources for career advancement, higher education, even employment to get their families out of the disenfranchised or underprivileged communities they're in are there. I asked them like, do you see more funeral homes or universities? Do you see more community centers or do you see more liquor stores? Do you see more, I don't know, job advancement centers than smoke shops? And I get the same answer nearly every single time. The numbers don't add up. They when I say like game banger or drug dealer, it's always a person of color. It may not always be black, but if it ain't black, it's brown. Almost every single time. And it doesn't matter the race I asked the kid. And just knowing that we still live in an America that has this psychodynamic, it's in the back of your mind. It ain't something that we think of every single day because we're desensitized to it, from the news to the violence. Look at ICE. You know, there are people that are speaking on it, but I've heard a lot of people in our community alone will say, for us, it's just another day. People getting riled up and all excited about what happened, but for us in our communities at any given day, walking down the street, racially profiled, doing absolutely nothing wrong, and could face the same dilemma this young lady did or this family did. So a lot of us are just kind of like, you know, what do we do? And if we have that mentality going into any future elections, any future moments where we can't stand up and fight and try to get the upper hand, man, we done already lost. We already lost.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I go along with what Peter said too, because, and you're right, Peter, 3 degrees in Minnesota. Well, let me just say this real quick. Minnesota is the coldest place I've ever been in my life. The coldest place I've ever been in my life. I remember I've been to Minnesota. Matter of fact, I went to the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I forgot what the temperature was, but it was so cold that my nose was burning. You know, you breathe and your nose stings. It was stinging, right? And I said, whoa, okay. If I ever come back to Minnesota, it's going to be in the summertime. I made up my mind there because this is cold. But to see people coming out and, I mean, just freezing, 3 degrees is below, look, that's almost as close as you can get to 0, except for 2 or 1, right? And for them to come out and support, that is encouraging. And you see people unifying across the country. You see the No Kings protest, you know, and the powers to be, they label it, oh, these are violent protesters. No. Again, it's gaslighting to the highest degree, the highest level. These people aren't violent. I've seen very, very little violence on TV, on YouTube, various places out, very, very little violence. And except for throwing snowballs at an ice vehicle. I've seen a little bit of that, but not to the degree that they are putting on people. I want to say hi to a couple of our listeners right here, and it's Kim Rogers, my great friend Kim Rogers, and it's a gentleman, Clayton, I think it's Clayton Mason Nouveau, 9206. He said his wife is part Japanese. Her teacher in high school told her that the Japanese internment camps did not exist. That the teacher was subsequently lost her job, as it should be. You have people that said the Holocaust didn't exist. You have people saying there's no slavery or there's no racism in America. Or you guys are overblowing this thing about slavery. That's why history is so vitally important that we don't forget. We do not forget. Going back, I forgot who was president when those students were murdered at Kent State. Was Reagan the president then? I'm not exactly
No,
sure who it was.
Nixon.
Oh,
Nixon.
Nixon. Okay. Wow, 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 wow. Yeah, and I remember that. That was a shame. And what happened,
And
Peter?
also, there were students shot and killed a day or two after that at Jackson State in Mississippi.
Jackson State University. That's right. That's an HCBU.
HBCU. Yes, sir.
HBCU. Absolutely. And so, no, we have to put a stop to that because we know at that time, I believe Herbert Hoover was also the FBI, the head of the FBI, I believe, and because he had put
The different
fact,
Hoover.
he was
J. Edgar.
J. Edgar Hoover. Yeah,
Right, not Herbert.
because he was surveilling.
Herbert Hoover's
J. Edgar Hoover.
resume. Herbert Hoover's resume was that he managed a gold mine in South Africa before he became president of the United States.
Oh, well, thank you for that. That's why we have you on the show. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, they were surveilling a lot of prominent Americans, especially Black Americans. He was surveilling Martin Luther King, Aretha Franklin. And you can go down the list. Absolutely. Thank you for correcting that. But I want your take on this thing. Going into schools. Going into schools. I was going to say, have you no decency? But it's beyond that. I mean, even worse than that. Don't you care about what happens to our children? Because growing up, and I want Warren to come in and talk about that, because if these things aren't addressed and you keep invoking fear on our children, that's going to carry over into their adult life. And that could cause a whole host of problems. It could cause a whole host of problems. It could lead into criminal. You could turn them into criminals. I think, Warren, you mentioned something about that. You could turn them into substance abusers. You could turn them into family abusers, domestic violence abusers. It could lead to a whole host of things. But Peter, I want you to jump in, and then let's go to Warren and let's address that issue.
Well, it's a critical time for kids of all ages. We get reports that kids are falling behind, since the pandemic, that the schools have still not really caught up with the ability to read, the ability to write, and to have large numbers of kids not come to school, to have large numbers of kids at school but worried about their friends. But I realize I also want to bring up a related point. On Wednesday of this past week, students from 9 different high schools in St. Paul walked out of school at noon, marched to the Minnesota State Capitol, several thousand high school students. We were in a crowd of adults that was sending the kids off. I got a lot of fist bumps from kids looking at them, and it was probably 14 degrees, so warmer than 3, but still cold. And these kids were from every racial group marching together to get to the state capitol to make their point that schools should not be places where armed military is coming into the schools, that schools should be a safe space in which to learn. And I thought these kids were getting a lesson in civics that you couldn't put a price tag on. that they're all too young to vote, but they're not too young to participate in a public demonstration and to express themselves about the things that are important to them. That was very inspiring.
It is inspiring, and it tells you that these children have more love for the country than this regime does. It's their country. You think about this, man. They're young, it's their country, and they don't want to grow up in a country that is more like, or is becoming more like North Korea than the America that they knew. You know, and Warren, we talked about our children, and you keep, and they where children are our future. Then we need to treat it as such. Treat them with respect. Treat them like you want to be able to leave a world for them that they can live and survive in peace and in harmony. You see, so I think that like I said, we opened earlier talking about the latter is true. I see a comment here from Clayton. He says, as a white guy, I don't know if you know how many people come to me thinking I'm as racist as them, but I'm at work. I can't cause a scene. I have thankfully it's not a corporate gig, but I shouldn't. So what I'm trying to say, what I think he's trying to say is that people think, maybe other white people think that he's a racist. And folks, I'm gonna tell you, the movement, civil rights movement, it took all of us coming together. It took white people, it took black people, it took brown people. We all came together and says no. Because I still believe that there are more good people out here than bad. I honestly do. I really do. You know, I don't know what the percentage is, but I do feel, but the thing about it is that we all have a voice and we all need to use it. And we need to use it in the right way in order to be effective. Juan, what's your take?
I couldn't agree with you more, because being a social worker, that's the other aspect of it, but it's still a conflict of interest. You know, one minute I'm hearing about programs like Pipeline to Prison. Then the next minute I see the videos of the youth standing up and so forth. So we were talking about the mental and psychological effects. I've went through it. You went through it. Just imagine having that best friend that may be from another country, and you see them come into schools and snatch them away because there's an ICE raid. And I totally agree. There are just certain places for certain things and so forth, right? But again, like the same way we had to go to school and had to get immunizations. Why wasn't a policy put in place where we look at things like that versus having the military come into school and snatch people up that they believe are illegal? Because not only is that young person seeing it that they believe is illegal, all of us are seeing it, no matter what race, gender we are as a child in school. And again, we are what we see. Plain and simple, you know what I'm saying? Like you were talking about the environments where some kids may grow up because they've seen domestic violence, and that's not always the case. Just because you went through it doesn't mean you have to become it. But research shows the more you're exposed to trauma-wise, it's going to affect you. You know, it's either going to affect you in a good way or a bad way. And if there's no one in the middle to help you be guided in the right direction, of course, if mama beat daddy or daddy beat mama, I'm gonna do the same thing when I get older, unless someone or some kind of influence comes into your life and changes that pathway. Look at how many people tell you need an education to be successful in America, and then we got so many billionaires that don't even have a high school diploma. So what is the message there? At the end of the day, do we influence education, or do we influence, like education ain't for everybody? And that can mess with your mental wellness, because I'm looking for identity. Identity is so important. Safety, trust, connection, identity. And we have shown that diversity is the key. I'm totally with it. Like, everyone is not going to grow up the same way. Some people going to go through things that other people not going to go through, right? And then we got a president that just says it's his way or the highway. A lot of our youth are going to be confused. But I love the ones that come from backgrounds that read the history, that know the socioeconomic aspects that have affected this culture, and do things like walk out of a classroom, have these protests, and so forth. Because sometimes it's the youth. But what scares me about that, Will and Peter, we live in a country where movements were started by the martyrdom of youth. Think of Emmett Till. Think of the 4 little girls in Birmingham. So I fear for these children because that's going to be more traumatic if they decide to throw more tear gas and do the same things to these youth that are protesting as they will do the adults. So that's why I call for all of my community organizers and so forth. If you see the babies out here, protect them, because there are some that mean well and want to see change. But we are in a tyrannical state right now that I fear, like that little girl that got exposed to that tear gas on the way to a medical appointment. We're going to see more of that than less. And we really got to stand behind them and protect them so they can see there's no need to fear. Okay. We had SNCC, we had the SCLC. We had these organizations that taught these youth how to go out here and do these sit-ins, how to do these walk-ups, how to do these marches and protests and be nonviolent, even when people were violent. This gentleman here, I'm looking at Clayton. Clayton, salute too. I understand what you're going through, even though you are a Caucasian male. We have some that try to inspire us to stay with your own. You know, many people in our community, African American, when we see a white person walk by, there's this nervousness or this awkwardness. Like, I can't talk to him the same way I would talk to somebody in my own neighborhood. I got to walk on eggshells. I got to code switch. I got to wear a mask. And then there are some in their communities that feel like, man, I'm just a regular average Joe guy. I ain't never been involved in anything racial. None of my, maybe I had some ancestors or something back in the day that owned slaves, but that ain't me. But all I see is a white male. And if I was programmed that way and desensitized to believe that way, every time I see you, no matter how many times you try to convince me you got black friends and you grew up in a black neighborhood, all I see is a white person. And until we can debrief some of this trauma and some of this information, it's going to continue to divide us and make us come together.
Absolutely. No question about it. And, I tell you who I feel, and I appreciate people like Clayton, Peter, man, I like Peter a whole lot. And the thing about it is, I wouldn't care what Peter was, it doesn't matter because I can look inside and I can see his heart. I could see his heart. And what drew me to Peter, because he told you about this, his PhD, I believe. And he wrote this, his dissertation, it was on labor in Richmond, Virginia, which is my hometown. I said, whoa, he is educating me about some things that I never knew. I didn't even know about it, right? And Thierry went to, I think he went to one, did he take one of your classes or he attended one of your lectures? He took one of your classes, and he was so impressed by you, he decided to stay back and start asking you a lot of questions, which is great. And I'm going to say something to my white brothers out there. If you are teaching your children to be racist, you are harming them. That should be child neglect. That should be considered child abuse, because you're putting them in a position that's going to make it difficult for them in life. You may be depriving them of opportunities that could come their way, because racism to me is a sickness. It is a sickness, and you are giving and just injecting your children with this poison. It's poison. It doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't help. And and think about this. I really don't know a happy racist. I can't see that you are happy because you have invoked violence on someone else. My mother, God bless her soul, she didn't teach us. And I grew up in the 50s, right here in Richmond, Virginia. And there was plenty of racism going on here. Peter can attest to that. But my mom, she had some white friends, but she never, ever taught us to be racist. Okay, and thank God for that. because I think that if you teach that there are good people out here, there's some bad people out here, and you can't draw everybody or draw the line says, okay, because you're white you're bad, or you're black you're bad, you're Hispanic you're bad. And if you're teaching your children that, shame on you. You should be ashamed of yourself, because you are denying them opportunities that they may otherwise have. Okay, you are closing the doors on them, because we learn from each other. And I do something every year, several times a year, and I have programs on Black history, and that's encouraging. And if all of us learn about the history, I could learn something. Peter could teach me something. I said, oh, wow, maybe a better way of doing something. Maybe motivated me, to do something that I hadn't thought about. Maybe finish that book that I started a couple of years ago. So many different things that I can do and contribute to society. And it's hard for a racist to contribute anything good. Peter, your take.
No, I agree that racism doesn't come from a happy place. And we recently, there was a program at the Eastside Freedom Library, and a group of Hmong community activists who were fighting the deportation of some of their community members convened a meeting. More than 100 people were there. And they said to the predominantly not Hmong audience, they said the most important thing that you can do is learn your own family's history. Find out what brought your family to the United States and what challenges they faced. And I think that racism has, on an interpersonal level, has typically been about not facing one's own story and instead inventing stories about other people as a way to avoid confronting and engaging your own story. So it's changed the way I teach, hearing that. So I teach a course on the history of immigration to Minnesota. And we start out by asking all the students to do research on their own family story. And it's amazing how little most of us know, that people held it back because it was tied to trauma and they didn't want to pass that trauma along. But we need to dig those stories up and learn them so that we can heal ourselves and be better neighbors to others. Warren, I see you nodding. Please.
Yes. And I totally agree. And this is where we are, I feel, in this era, that I'm still trying to unwrap, find a solution. I didn't understand racism until I became a social worker. And let me explain what I mean. There is a such thing known as reverse racism. I'm sorry, it just is. Because there are people that will make, playing devil's advocate, there are some people that will make assumptions and excuses due to racism. Seriously. And my problem with racism, I'll be totally honest, because I'm doing a lot with my clients with ACT therapy now. My issue with racism is not the fact that you may not like me because of the color of my skin. It's the systemic things that come with racism. Okay, literally all of us have things that we will go for and we won't go for. And now, and I'm not saying it's just education, but it did give me a perspective. And I give you the best example of it. I like the Green Bay Packers. Peter, being in Minnesota, may be a Vikings fan. And you know that we are rivals in the NFC North. Like literally, the Packers don't rock with the Vikings. So we can get along, right? We can talk football banter and so forth. But nothing I'm doing besides wishing that the Vikings lose in a football game is going to stop this man's well-being, his financial security, his livelihood. So at the end of the day, you can be a person that may not rock with a certain group of people. It don't matter if it's race, it don't matter if it's gender, it don't matter if it's your sexual orientation. It's just certain spiritually, it's certain things we're raised to do and told not to be a part of. But it's when I go and decide I'm gonna shoot up a school or of young Catholics, or when I say you can't get a loan because you're a black man at the bank, or I don't go over to this neighborhood because I'm gonna be profiled as a black man, that it becomes a problem. Like when we talk race, we gotta get into critical race theory. We gotta get into the systemic aspects, because that's where the trauma comes from. You can literally not like another man. I got people that's black I don't like. Let's just be real. I got people in my own community I don't get along with every day. And during the panel, we are talking to one of our brothers, Elliot. He was on the show. We can be who we are as long as it doesn't jeopardize our safety, our connection, our well-being. And let's just be a band. You have people that are antisocial. They don't like people. But when they go outside, they are still able to flourish in that capacity of whatever their job is, whether you got some police officers and so forth that actually do their job. And then you ask them on a day off in their personal lives, no, I don't hang around black people, or no, I don't deal with brown people and so forth. And they keep that to themselves. But we may look at that gentleman and say, oh, he's racist. No, that's that man's opinion and his perspective. I'm not going to hate him for that. But if he shot my son down or one of my friends down because of the color of their skin, that's a little deeper. Because there are some that take racism and look at it like, because I'm a certain, and it's that caste system. And the crazy thing about it, we always talking about black and white, but if you do your history, Peter, help me out here. A lot of the caste system started in India, literally in India. Like there are people in that Asian population that don't like each other because of the shades of their skin. And here we are in America still trying to make it so black and white and not brown, now that our Hispanic brothers are here. But again, it's not, from my perspective, just the racism. It's what racism can do to jeopardize someone's livelihood. It's no different than being homophobic. It's no different than being chauvinistic. And until we compare it and put it in that same category and address it as such, we still over here mad because somebody a different skin color than us. And we got to change that. We got to change that programming.
That's right.
And it's still decades of that going on. It ain't been 50 years that we couldn't drink from the same water fountain. Maybe 60 now, but it's still not a century ago. And there's still areas in the South where you go in any given bathroom and still see rhetoric and so forth, like KKK and kill all N-words and so forth. So we still got a lot of growing to do. And I feel like we got to approach it from a different angle versus it just being the racism and discrimination. No, let's talk about the factors that happen in certain communities because of these two things.
Mm-hmm. I've learned something from a lot of different races, a lot of different people from different backgrounds and things of that nature. And I'm actually excited to meet somebody from another race. And we can definitely be friends. There's no question about it, because I know I take each meeting as a learning experience. Okay. Whatever that experience is. It could be music. It could be history. It could be science. It could be anything, because we can all learn from one another, and we shouldn't do that. I was also looking at something Clayton said, and he's an Army vet. Clayton, I would certainly respect and appreciate that, brother. I have my brother Clayton, who is a retired Air Force Master Sergeant. My granddaughter was in the Army. I have a nephew right now that's a captain in the Army. I have a cousin that was a full bird colonel. And I have two other brothers that was in the Army. My son was in the Navy. And so, and I certainly respect our service members. I am very upset the way the administration, they're treating our vets. I don't think they're giving them their due, the rights that they are due, the promises that were made to them. Something my brother told me being in the Air Force. And he was telling me about some fellow Air Forcemen. I'm not sure that's the right terminology or not. That he met that were white, and they told him, "Man, I didn't know that." After they got to know him, "Oh, I didn't know that. I was taught this way." You know, they grew up in a racist environment, whether it was family or whatever it was, right? And he was saying, and so many said, "Well, I didn't know. Well, I never knew anything about your kind, your people. I was taught this. Now I'm learning something different." So that's why I say again, I'm going back to that. Whoever you are, do not harm your children by teaching them to be racist, rather. I saw something that was quite disturbing to me. There was nowhere near me. I just saw a clip of this, and this KKK member had their baby dressed up in a hood and sheet. Why would you do something like that to your child? And your child doesn't know any better because, children are like sponges. And we go up mimicking and repeating what we've learned, you see. I'm serious about that. And it doesn't matter who you are, what race you are, you do not cripple your child like that. So this child is going to grow up and with these ideals, because this is what they're taught. You're only going to repeat what you've learned or what you know and think to be true. And if your parents, because everyone grew up, looking up to their parents. If your parent says, "Look, see that person over there? That black person over there? That Chinese person over there? That Hispanic person over there? Look, they are all evil people. And you never want to associate with them." Well, what is the child going to believe unless there is an intervention and they're taught something different? Come on, don't do that to your child. And same thing with black people. Just because someone is a different color, don't teach your children. No, see that white person there? Oh, no, all white people are evil. That is not true. That is not true.
And then we got people where that feel like
all black people aren't good.
Right.
Come on, let's be honest, man.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
And what I was gonna say is, we have to progress. Progress is the key, right? And what I mean also by reverse racism is, I hear you. Don't teach your kids about what happened. Don't teach your kids racism. Don't teach your kids all white people are bad. And there are some, Peter, that feel we're erasing the history. If we try to let bygones be bygones and not talk about it. So we need to get a comfortable space to be able to talk about these things, because this affects mental and emotional wellness as well. Look at what Florida did trying to erase all the history. Look at your man's trying to get rid of Martin Luther King Day, saying he's trying to make his birthday a national holiday and get rid of MLK Day. And if you haven't seen it, I advise anybody, I don't care what race you are, please see The Unstoppable by Dave Chappelle. And Dave Chappelle talks about the conversation about how Stevie Wonder made him go to John McCain's funeral. And it's a lot of backstory behind that. Never knew John McCain was one of the senators that fought against MLK back in the day, becoming a national holiday. That's why Stevie Wonder wanted Dave Chappelle to go to he's like, well, I don't really rock with McCain like that. And when he closes that comedy set, talking about some of these manners from the Mann Act to what we're talking about today, it's classic. It's probably his best one. And the reason I'm saying that is there are many of us that believe history has to be harsh. We have to teach our youth that's traumatizing as well. And if we don't teach them, then we forget about what happened. And then that's look at how many Black history stories to this day, Will, that still come up. And I'm like, at 44 years old, I never knew that. Never remember the gentleman we had last time we were on the set together that was heckling us about Garrett Morgan and the traffic light and so forth. And again, always a new day to learn something new, always a new day to learn. And we should go with that motive, right? But there are some that are stuck in their ways. Like I promise you, I got friends and family members that feel like because my grandkid or my great grandkid has white friends, they don't understand what we had to go through for them to get there. There was a day you couldn't even speak to a white person. There was a day you couldn't look in that direction. If they come in on the sidewalk, you got to get off the sidewalk and walk down the street or walk in the grass. We really went through that in the times of Jim Crow, like literally. And it was a form of intimidation. It was a form of putting people of color in their place after slavery went away. Systemic, again, the disenfranchised and the systemic aspect. And that's what makes racism so harsh, when people try to deny others a fair and equal opportunity in this country due to the color of their skin. And that's what ICE is doing with citizens that want to come here and learn our policies. But I'm gonna be a little biased about it. I'm like, if we live in a country like this, blood can be shed over different opinions, different views, different skin colors, why would you want to come here? To be chastised even more and sent back to your country if they think you're an illegal.
That's right. That's right. Peter?
Yeah, I think too that, and I really appreciate, Warren, what you're saying, that our immigrant neighbors contribute so much to our well-being. So, not to keep beating on Minnesota weather, but 3 years ago, I fell on a patch of ice and ended up having back surgery. Well, my surgeon was an immigrant. The nurses who cared for me were immigrants. That our healthcare system depends on knowledgeable, skilled, committed immigrant workers, professionals, and less, all. Our food supply. Who is working the fields in California and picking vegetables? It's our immigrant neighbors. We need them and what they bring to our community as a whole. So we end up denying ourselves. We deny our understanding of ourselves. We deny the insights that we might gain to our own families' histories by interacting with people who are now going through the kind of immigrant journey that our grandparents or great-grandparents might have gone through. We can learn so much. And I can continue to find the degree of empathy and mutual aid that immigrants give to each other within their families and within their communities can show us how we don't need to be selfish like that orange-headed guy in the White House. We don't need to be mean-spirited. We don't need to be competitive. We can be cooperative. We can be kind. We can care for each other. And we can learn that from the very people that ICE is tormenting and abusing. And they have so much to teach us.
Absolutely. I'm trying to pull up something because you mentioned about your back surgery. And let me see if this will work for me. Let's do this. Let's see if I can pull this up. Okay, where is the volume? Okay, here we are. That's not what I'm looking for. Okay, this is what I want. Okay, here we go.
1985, was an African-American surgical technician who, despite having no formal medical degree, developed the procedure used to treat blue baby syndrome, tetralogy of Fallot. For decades, he was one of the most skilled cardiac pioneers in the world. Yet he was classified as a janitor and paid a menial wage due to the racial segregation of his time. Here is an overview of his remarkable life and contribution to medicine. The dream deferred, born in Louisiana and raised in Nashville, Tennessee.
Can you guys hear that?
Yes.
Thomas was an
Okay.
with a clear goal to become a doctor. He secured a spot at Tennessee Agricultural and Industrial College, but the stock market crash of 1929 wiped out his life savings. Forced to drop out, he took a job as a laboratory assistant at Vanderbilt University to make ends meet, intending to save money to return to school. He never did, due to the unlikely partnership. At Vanderbilt, Thomas began working for Dr. Alfred Blaylock. Blaylock quickly realized Thomas had a natural genius for surgery and research. The move to Hopkins. When Blaylock was offered the position of chief of surgery at Johns Hopkins University in 1941, he accepted on one condition. Vivian Thomas had to come with him. The disparity. At Johns Hopkins, Thomas was officially classified as a janitor. He was paid significantly less than white counterparts and, due to segregation, had to enter the hospital through the back door, even while running the surgical lab inside. 3. The blue baby breakthrough. In the 1940s, pediatric cardiologist Dr. Helen Taussig approached Blaylock about blue baby syndrome, a congenital heart defect that deprived infants of oxygen, turning their skin blue and usually leading to early death. The experiment, Blaylock tasked Thomas with solving the problem. Thomas spent nearly a year performing experiments on dogs, eventually replicating the heart defect and developing a surgical technique to repair it. The surgery, 1944. When Blaylock performed the first human surgery on an infant named Eileen Saxon, he had only done the procedure once before on a dog. Thomas had done it hundreds of times. Blaylock insisted Thomas stand on a stool behind him to talk him through the operation step by step. The outcome: the surgery was a success, and the Blaylock-Taussig shunt became famous worldwide. However, Thomas's name was left off the paper, and he received no public credit for decades. Legacy and recognition. Despite the lack of credit, Thomas became a legend within the hospital. He served as the supervisor of surgical laboratories at Johns Hopkins for 35 years. The teacher of surgeons. He trained many of the world's most famous heart surgeons, including Dr. Denton Cooley. Residents often noted that, even though Thomas wasn't a doctor on paper, he was the best surgeon in the room. Honorary doctorate. In 1976, Johns Hopkins University finally awarded him an honorary Doctor of Laws, allowing his colleagues and students to officially call him Dr. Thomas. Pop culture. His story was dramatized in the HBO film Something the Lord Made, 2004, starring Mos Def as Thomas and Alan Rickman as Blaylock. Vivian Theodore.
Okay. I don't know. You guys
One of
have
my
ever heard of
favorite
it
movies.
before?
That's one of my favorite movies.
Wow. Do you see
Say again?
how it's important
Oh.
that we share this type of information instead of erasing it? And finally, he got his due. He never became a doctor, but he did get his honorary doctorate. And they had to acknowledge he wasn't an official surgeon, but he was the best one they had. So these types of things need to be shared, whether you're white, whether you're an immigrant, whether you're brown. It doesn't matter, folks. We need to acknowledge greatness because, as shown there, it saves lives, doesn't it?
Yep.
It saves lives when we can acknowledge excellence in someone else. Instead of, see, we're shooting ourselves in the foot when we say, well, no DEI. Well, see, this is the thing about it is, and they've distorted that. Because DEI, we already know what it stands for, what it really stands for, but they bastardized that acronym. Because that doesn't mean that you'll get the job just because you're black or you're brown or you're a woman. That doesn't mean that. That means at least I get a chance to interview. I get a chance to show you who I am. But to deny that altogether, guess what? You are denying your company, your school, whatever it is. Because who knows who's going to be that next Vivian, all right? that comes up and discovers something that could save someone's life. Who knows that? But that's why to deny certain cultures is to deny maybe your own well-being in so many different ways. We've learned from each other so many different things, and we can go after invention after invention after invention after invention and showcase that people never knew about, the greatness of this particular person of color, this whatever it is. Share it. I think I love more learning more after I've been out of school than I was in school. I'm saying, wow, okay, this is so cool, man. So and Peter, I'm sure in your library you have books on Black culture, certain cultures and things of that nature. And I think you said over 32,000 books in your library?
38,000, yes.
38, I'm sorry, sir. 38,000 books. That's a lot of material there. Hey, tell us a little bit about your collection of books, the types of books you collect, and just tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I think that history is told in many ways. So, yes, this is a library about history, but it includes poetry, theater, visual art, music, the many ways that stories are told and that accounts of history are told. I wonder, give an example, the folks that are listening may not know about what were called the WPA slave narratives. And so during the Great Depression of the 1930s, the federal government under Franklin Delano Roosevelt enacted a number of job creation programs. And one of those programs was to create jobs for unemployed professors and teachers. And they were hired to take tape recorders and travel through the South and find living, formerly enslaved men and women, and to collect their oral histories. More than 2,000 oral histories were collected that way. And they had no plan, the government at the time, for what they would do with that material. And it got put on a shelf at the Library of Congress, and it sat there from 1937 until the middle 1960s. And in the 1960s, with, as we've talked about tonight, the civil rights movement, changing the way Americans thought about their history and understood what had been done, some graduate students began to do research and wanted to tell the story of the experience of enslavement from the point of view of enslaved people, and not just from the diaries and letters and records that slave masters had kept. And they rediscovered these 2,000 plus oral histories, and ultimately a 66 volume collection of what were called the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, slave narratives, were published and made available. And middle school and high school kids come to the East Side Freedom Library doing research projects, and they find resources like that they can use, that tell them history in a new way.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So now, do you have the teachers, do they schedule like maybe field trips to come to your library? Is that what happens?
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, 140 seventh graders came to the library, and I had to negotiate with the teachers how to stagger their presence so that we weren't overwhelmed. So we had 40 kids at a pop. But it was great, and now they're all doing research projects, and the outcome is some of them will create performance pieces, some of them will create storyboards, some will create documentary videos, some will create interactive websites, and every now and then a kid will write a paper. So all of these different ways that they take the responsibility to tell the story of history.
I love it. I love it. And so by with this, man, you are creating a whole new genre of or a whole new way of learning by doing that, and who knows, you may have inspired several different writers or historians or storytellers. And so I think it's a magnificent thing that you're doing.
Thank you.
Warren?
You.
Warren? Wow, we've got 4 minutes left. Guys, I want to thank both of you for hanging with me for almost 2 hours here. Really appreciate that. I think to our listening audience, this has been valuable. I've been encouraged by it. Warren, what is your last word, my brother?
Peter, let's make it work, man. Let's go to Minnesota, do a panel on racism and social divides, man. I'm with it. Your library, I'll get the panelists together. Let's make something shake. A lot of conversations still need to be had, but when I think ICE, I think of when they used to tell us in school to go back to Africa, and I hate it. I don't like it. Honestly, don't like it. If you're getting illegal criminals out of here that are not supposed to be here, like you said, we're a totally different story and so forth. But when you're messing with innocent families, trying to make a living, the immigrants that want to come here, create social change, create innovations. All of us are immigrants. I don't care. It's just so much diversity in our bloodstreams now. No one can say for the most part that they are natives to this land. Maybe a few of our Native American brothers and sisters, but other than that, everybody is an immigrant in some shape, form, or fashion, right? And for this man to come in and create this unit that breaks up homes, devours spirits, causes trauma. Yes, it's going to mess with our mental and psychological aspects, and we got to do better. And we got to stand up. We got to fight. We got to advocate, even when it feels like we're not winning. Still fight. Yep. Many of us know what that's like. If you're from the Jewish population, if you're from the African American, if you're from any of color or marginalized community, and it ain't just about race, right? We got our LGBTQIA brothers and sisters out there. We got those that are physically and mentally disabled. All of these are vulnerable populations that I feel he's prying on and trying. And the same aspect goes for each and every one of them. No matter what about your population makes you vulnerable, something has happened to you that has messed with your mental and emotional awareness. And therapy, as well as talking to someone, coming together and unwrapping these layers of trauma and dissonance can effectively prepare us for the fight that's coming. I agree with you wholeheartedly with these midterm elections and so forth. There is a fight, but are we mentally prepared for it? And I'm going to end on that.
Are we? Wow, wow, wow. Gentlemen, this has been enlightening for me. I really appreciate you two gentlemen coming on. I'm excited about what we did, and I believe this: if you try to do something good is going to come out of it. I really believe that. I believe, and what we try to do here, we try to motivate, uplift, and educate the best we can. That's why I bring on gentlemen like you, Peter, gentlemen like you, Warren, and there's several people that I bring in. I bring in people that are experts in various fields, people who have life experience that I think that the audience could appreciate. And so I just try to provide a platform that would facilitate that work. And so, and you guys helped me do that. And anytime you, Warren, and Peter, you know, you're always welcome. You always have a seat at the table, man. And so I can't thank you gentlemen enough for what you do. And continue the good work, man. And come back, because you always have a seat at the table here. All right.
Thank you.
Gentlemen,
thank you for creating the table, William.
Always a pleasure, my brother. Thank you for the platform.
Yep.
Hey, right here, my brother. Enjoy your evening. Come back in about an hour, because guess what? I'm gonna kick back and play some good music. All right. So you guys have the apps. You have the website. That app on Apple is Studio W. Google is Studio W. Available on Alexa, Google Play, Apple CarPlay, and that website. Don't forget that website. StudioW.buzz, StudioW.buzz. We'll be on Facebook Live and LinkedIn tonight. So enjoy your evening, gentlemen, and thanks again.
Stay well. Thank you.
My pleasure.